guys, I'm Tiffany,
And I'm Anthony.
and we are the Ambulance Academy.
So today we're just going to be answering a few questions. We've been getting a lot of questions from our DMs, our prospective students, and even on YouTube. So today we're just going to kind of clear the air and try to provide as much feedback as we can to some of these questions. So the first question is, why do I need a medical director?
Very good question. So, in the ambulance space, you cannot operate your business without a medical director. A medical director essentially writes out your protocols. Protocols being, in the event of this, you do this. If the patient is having these signs and symptoms, so they are the party or the person that basically tells you how to perform medically in the event that something negative happens while you are transporting the patient. So, in the state of Georgia and any other state, you will absolutely have to have a medical director. I do want to add a side note. Your medical director preferably should be someone that is an ER doctor or has worked in the ER space in the past, because they should be able to provide you with protocols that make sense for running an ambulance business. So I hope that answers your question.
Who is a medical director? Can it be just anyone, or is it a particular person? What are the credentials?
So the medical director must be a medical doctor licensed in the state that you operate in, cannot be a nurse practitioner. They are technically addressed as doctor as well, but they have to be medical doctors. They have to be licensed in the state with the current license in the state that you are operating in.
Awesome. All right. Question number two: how much does it cost to start up your very own non-emergency ambulance company?
It varies again by state. I learned that in the state of Texas, you have to show, I think it's $100,000 in the bank
Mm-hmm.
in order to even apply with the state.
Yep.
And so maybe, but in the state of, I'll just use Georgia. In the state of Georgia, it's required for you to show, funds in the bank. So it just really varies state by state. I would say just startup costs alone, I would have at least access to about $60,000 to be comfortable. And that doesn't necessarily include the purchase of the ambulance, but I would definitely have access to about at least 60,000, if not much more.
Awesome. So, what is billing in non-emergency ambulance space?
So billing is essentially the process at which you bill for the transport that was done. So if I transport Mrs. Jordan to dialysis, and say I just do one trip to dialysis and she ends up going to the hospital by another service, I'm going to submit that transport to my billing department, and they're going to submit that transport to the insurance company. And that is the process basically at which I would be paid.
Nice. Now, is that something that I, as the business owner, could probably do on my own, or is that something that you hire somebody to do?
I mean, anything is possible, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. I personally would actually recommend against it because I've heard horror stories from other colleagues in the industry that have had like one designated person in their office that handled billing, and then that person may have got mad and left without giving them any kind of notice. Maybe they got sick. There are so many things that can happen. And once billing stops, the money stops. And so I personally, I never wanted to venture into that space as of yet, I should say, because I want to make sure I have a whole team behind me
Absolutely.
that handles my billing. And that way, if there are any issues with billing, I can call them. If there are any appeals that need to be done, they work the appeals.
Mm-hmm.
They totally are, even though they're not in-house, I can call them, and it's essentially like they're right next door in my office to handle all of my billing needs. So I hope that answers your question.
That definitely answers the questions. You definitely want a team of people who are handling your billing, because that is the cash flow of your business. That's how you get paid. You want to make sure you're getting paid on time each and every time. And if you're just trying to learn this on your own, on top of starting a business,
Right.
I mean, you have to understand each policy in each state for each insurance. They all have their own appealing process, patient qualifying process. It's just way too much.
So much information.
Yep.
It's just something that I wouldn't suggest,
Yep.
especially in the early stages of running and scaling your own non-emergency.
That's the last thing you want to worry about. Okay. Next question. How much can this ambulance business generate in a year?
That's a loaded question. It can generate as much as you want it to generate. Essentially, I want to say that, of course, in the beginning, I'm always big on, making sure you have your systems in place and making sure you grow slowly so that you can nip and tuck anything that isn't working right.
Mm-hmm.
But in a year, right now, I'm at 1.5 million for my business. I operate 3 to 4 trucks a day. I'm comfortably at 1.5, probably will be at 2 million in 2023. And you yourself, you have 2 trucks. You only operate 3 days a week, and you will probably be hitting around what in 2023?
600 ish.
600,000.
Yeah.
So, it really just depends on how you want to grow and scale. So there's plenty of money to be made in this industry. It's just really about making sure you have the proper systems in place early on so that you can, capture as much money as possible.
Nice, nice. So if I'm not an EMT, how can I start this business?
So if you're not an EMT, the first thing you want to consider is access to capital. You can definitely still own and operate an ambulance business, but you want to make sure you have enough money to be able to pay that person that would basically be you, who would be an EMT, who would be able to get on the truck, but also manage the office as well. They would need to also be able to teach you the ins and outs of business as well. So ins and outs meaning patient management, marketing, billing things,
Yep.
and other systems around how to make the business run efficiently. And so I would say to definitely have more access to capital than what I originally said earlier. I currently pay my manager, who is an EMT, approximately around between 65 and 70,000 a year. So that's just something to consider if you are wanting to get into the space, but not necessarily work in the space, and you want to hire somebody to manage and run the business for you. Answer your question?
Yeah, I think it does. And another thing that we're going to point out here is to make sure you're still familiarizing yourself with the business, with the processes that she just alluded to, because this is not a business that you can just invest in and just step away and pop your head back in 3 months later. So, yeah, I think that definitely answered the question, though, Tiff. So, going down to our last couple of questions here, Tiffany, how do I get patient in this space for my ambulance service?
So I would say it's not as hard as it sounds. Our model is the dialysis model. So the first place I would go is to dialysis centers. I would do lunch and learns. I would make sure I'm professionally dressed, make sure I know how I stand up and compare against the competition. I would know who my competition is in the area. So I would just consistently show my face, consistently follow up, make sure I am, just always on the top of their mind. So that way, when they have a need for a patient to be transported, they would think of me and my company first. You could also go to nursing homes. You could go to hospitals, anywhere that patients are congregated essentially and would have a need for transport. But the first place I would say to start would be at dialysis centers, for sure.
That's definitely it. So last question here. I'm in trucking right now. How easy is the transition from a trucking company to opening up a non-emergency ambulance service?
So I would say there are some similarities. If you're in trucking, you already understand the importance of keeping your vehicle well maintained, and just how if your vehicle is not well maintained, it doesn't go on the road and it doesn't make any money. So that is a direct similarity that we have in the ambulance space, because technically we're a logistics company as well.
Absolutely.
We just transport people, not materials or things. And so I would say you have that going for you, as well as you know how to maintain and manage employees. We have employees as well in our industry, so you kind of understand what it takes and documents that you have to have in managing employees. So you have that going for you as well. And then in terms of just understanding logistics altogether, and how if you need to be here at this time, you can't overbook yourself to be somewhere else at the same time. So kind of a lot of similarities in trucking and owning an ambulance business. I think that there are still a lot of things that you would need to make sure you know. And I think the only way to know those things is really to get a mentor, because there's just a lot of information that's easy or not so easy to find.
Yep.
And so I would say you would be a great candidate, but you would absolutely positively need to get a great mentor on your team in order to get you from point A to point Z efficiently, effectively, without wasting time and money.
Absolutely. We're going to wrap it up here today, Tiffany. Thank you guys for submitting all of these questions. They were super helpful. I hope they were helpful for you guys as well. Guys, if you guys have more questions, please leave a comment. We're going to make another video like this, hopefully, if we get enough questions, and put there some more. So I'm Anthony.
And I'm Tiffany, and we are Ambulance Academy. Please comment, like, and subscribe on more tips and insights on how to grow and scale your own non-emergency ambulance.